Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we took a look at how to use Ollama and how to set up models locally and all that kind of stuff. So in this video, I want to go ahead and shut off my internet so we can do this all locally. So imports. A few things. We have HTMX. We're going to be using client-side templates. The extension, just because we're going to be using Nunjucks, so I have to import that. So in the last video, we took a look at Ollama's curl responses briefly, and you notice it's expecting JSON. Because of that, we have to use the JSON encoding library. We can actually read what the extension's doing. Super simple extension. You can actually just copy this in your code if you wanted to. But this is how you define extensions with HTMX, and then we're giving it a name, or they gave it a name, and all it's doing is changing the headers to type of JSON, and then we're also going to stringify the parameters. So we're going to take that form data, we're going to JSON stringify into JSON. So it's super simple, nothing too complicated, but we do need to use this in order to submit JSON, which I know is like super anti-HTMX. We want everything to be hypermedia, but this exists for a reason, and you can see how simple the implementation is. So if you do want to send JSON, this is the way you do it, and it's fairly straightforward. We're also going to import Tailwind because, are you silly? Have you not been watching the channel? So yeah, Tailwind. I'm going to go ahead and add these styles up front just because we know, I mean, it's a chat window, it's going to scroll, and we just want the scroll not to be ugly, so we are going to do this. Actually, we don't need these. I was going to try to apply Tailwind style. I was going to try to apply Tailwind styles to the actual thing, but we don't need it. It's fine. Like this is good enough. So I'm going to swap over to that window, and there's actually nothing in there yet. We are using the live server extension to see what's going on over here. So if I type in hi, that should update to hi. But we're actually going to just copy in some stuff, and it's the same stuff from the tutorial on how to make a dashboard, the first Nunjucks tutorial, where we are basically grabbing a random image from Unsplash. While in theory that URL would work actually perfectly fine for in practice if we're connected, I realized that when I wrote it, I was online, so it doesn't make sense now to do it. So I'm going to try to grab just another. I mean, that one's good enough. Who doesn't like mounts? I'm going to copy image link, and I'll just make an image folder. So make their image, cd into image, and then we'll wget that image, and I should have named it something, so we'll just do mountains dot JPEG. Okay, so we have that. So I just shut off my internet again, and what we'll do is I'm gonna move that up here for you guys, and I'll just comment it out. And I'll move this up here, I'll comment it out for you guys, and then I'm gonna go ahead and type in here /image/ mountains dot JPEG, and that is something. That is something. We're gonna leave it like that because it doesn't matter. We don't care. We just need a background. That's a background. It works. Okay, and next we'll create a main div, and this div is gonna have some styles too. Let me get rid of this. Where did I go wrong with this? And I'm listing them this way just to make it easier for you to see on the screen. I obviously don't think that you should write Tailwind vertically this way, but it just makes it very easy to read. You can see what's going on. I try to space it out so you can kind of see what's going on. We're giving it a height of 90 view height, and that's this container here, this darkened container. And it's relatively responsive, so it just stays more or less the same shape. That's why it's going from width full as the default. Remember, Tailwind is mobile first when you're designing stuff, so width full, design it in a window size kind of like this. I'm going to close the Ollama window. We don't need that anymore. Usually start here, and then for responsiveness, just scale this thing back up and then see what you actually need to do. So for medium and above, we have 3/5, and then for large and above, we have 2/5. And then it's a flex container in a column, items, holy cross, whatever in this in the center, P-8, so padding 8, gap, all that stuff. That should be really straightforward for you guys at this point. This next one, what we're gonna do is add a chat window. And I'm just going through these real quick because the important thing is just when we get to HTMX and Ollama, chat stuff goes here. We have to give it an ID because we need to know where we're gonna append this stuff to, right? So that's where the messages are going. And then we obviously need a section where the input's gonna go. So we're gonna add a div here that we can close off. And inside of this div, we're gonna add a loading indicator. And this loading indicator is gonna have some styles too. It's gonna be kind of ridiculous to see on the screen because it's so long. But it is it's just there. It should have shown up. Oh no, okay, so we already have HTMX imported and it has HTMX indicator in here, so it's not anywhere to be found. So we can go ahead and it just says Ollama message incoming, and then it's going to be animated because we're using Tailwind's built-in animations, which it has a few of. If we hover over it now, it's not saying anything, but if we add a new file called tailwind.config.js, even if it doesn't have anything in it, and I close it, now when we hover over this, IntelliSense is going to know, hey, that's whatever this is. And if we actually take that off and add a dash, we can see some of the other ones it has. I'm just going to leave it as is with the bounce because we don't really care for the other ones. This actually works pretty fine. We're just going to use an input for HTMX. That's all that's going on there. So obviously that looks ridiculous. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to copy over the styles. We can go over them really quickly. We'll do this. That's so silly. So we have these styles here. So widthful, obviously, height 16. Some of this stuff is just so that the loading indicator kind of plays nice with it. So margin top negative, meaning pull the thing closer to me and not further away at the top. And then, rounded stuff just to match kind of the general theme of this. Placeholder text. This is a kind of pseudo selector thing so that we can just grab the placeholder element, which in this case is just going to be, ask Ollama something. And it'll be there, it'll look nice, it'll look pretty. And on top of that, what we want to do is make sure that we're giving this an input because we do need a little bit of JavaScript for this in order to give it better functionality. We don't actually need it for the JSON encoding thing to work. Remember that Ollama HTMX does do the inheritance thing. So if we added this extension to the body, like we did for the client side templates, it would attach to everything, and that's technically fine. But the reason I'm adding it here is because if you're going to use it in a full production application or anything like that, you might want to be selective with which queries are going to be JSON versus which are going to be forms and hypermedia and that sort of thing. So that's that. We also want to give it a name for the value of this, right? Because this is still a form input technically before it gets JSONified, and we need to know what Ollama is expecting. And per the last video, if you go take a look wherever I put it up there, it's expecting a prompt data point. So we're going to be doing that. And the other things that it's expecting, if you watch that video, is a model and any optional parameters, so temperature, that sort of stuff, if you didn't define your own file, which we also went over in that video. And we're going to add that here as hx-vals. And this is just a JSON object. So we're telling it that the model is going to be Mistral, or we could do, it doesn't matter, that's fine. Actually, you know what? We wrote one in the last video. You can check that out. It's called Writer Dude, which comes up with YouTube titles. So since we're not adding chat history to this is going to be fine. The next thing we need to do is tell it that we're going to use a nunjux template. In this case, it's an array template because that's we're just getting back an array, and we're telling it what template that's going to be. I'll copy that over in a second, but first we want to copy over the last few things, which is what are we targeting, and that's why we gave it an ID earlier, so chat window, so this main box up here. And then we're also going ahead and make sure that we're swapping it in before the end of the container. This is the chat window. It's going to try to do it before the end instead of after end, which would be after the element. And then trigger, I'm saying submit. We don't have a form, so technically we don't have a submit, but that's where the JavaScript is going to, we're going to force it to do that. And then loading indicator is just going to be that loading indicator ID that we'd set up above. And again, it's typed text, so that's just standard. Before we do anything else, I'm going to copy in what it would be. So we have here in the chat window, if I just copy over, this is probably how you want to do things when you're actually planning out these projects, is that you actually want to, build out the UI, add some stuff, number one, almost as if it was like a Figma kind of thing. So how to make bacon burgers with ham. And then this will update, and like if this was going to be something where you had a few different titles, you can kind of see how that plays together, where these actually should be individual p tags for each of them. So it'd be that's funny. Yeah, that wouldn't work. That is not I meant to do that so you guys can see that that's absolutely not how you would do that. But the point is that you have text, and in this case we're giving it a little name down here, but you can give it writer dude, which is actually the one that we're going to be using. The idea is that once you know what your element's going to look like, you can actually just cut this out. Oops. You can actually cut this out. Right? And then now we can go ahead and create somewhere here, script. And that becomes our template, right? So since we said it was an array template, what we have coming in is data, and what the name of the value is going to be data, and then response is the thing that we're expecting. So this is going to be a script. I'm just going to copy this in because it's pretty straightforward. We need to give it the same ID. We have to tell it's a template so it doesn't keep screaming about the period over here. And that's basically what it is. And then we have a similar one, which I'll just copy in, which is the user message. So I'll put it below this script. So it's very similar, just different colors. And then, it kind of forces itself to the other side. You can take a look at the things on the screen or check out the code on the Patreon if you want to take a look. And that is that for the actual template. So super simple, very basic chat window. Where it gets interesting is what we set up here, where we're giving it that API that's local to the Ollama server, and then we're giving it the information it needs, and we're just going to populate this thing. Super easy. Okay, so to keep things pretty light, pretty quick, I want to make sure that you don't hate me. We are going to just paste this in, and I'm going to go over very quickly how it all works. So I'm doing this with JavaScript for the sake of showing that we can also augment the HTMX stuff with JavaScript if we need to, or if we want to. In this case, you might be able to get away with doing it with the HTMX scripting parameters like the hx on and doing it that way. But we can use JavaScript too, because why not? We can use the HTMX JS API in order to find elements very quickly, and then we can add an event listener for key down, and then we can give it a function that we want it to do. Now, you could do this with the HTMX scripting things right in line, and that's technically the better way to do it because it's going to be, it's going to be side by side with the element that you're actually scripting, and that makes it more readable. You would still have to attach this function, and I feel like that gets a little long-winded, especially since this was already getting pretty long. So what we can do is, on key down, we're going to check if it's enter, right, the enter key, and make sure that we're not using shift. So you could still shift enter, and it won't submit. And then if you only do enter, then it will submit. Prevent default behavior, and then what we're going to do is we're going to find the value of our input, so whatever it is that we just typed before pressing enter. We're going to trigger submit. I was going to do this stuff where it was if we typed in clear or typed in reload. So it's fully text-based, sort of fully text-based, changing it up, but we're not going to do that now. So actually, I give that to you as a challenge. After you test this out, go ahead and try to add that so you can clear the chat and then reload it and do all that kind of stuff right from the chat box. But what we're going to do is, all we're going to do is get the value. We're going to trigger submit. And then the reason we need to grab that value first before clearing or before doing anything else is because we want to use the Nunjux API next in order to, find the template that we created down here, up here. So we're going to find this template with Nunjux, or with HTMX. We're going to find it, and then we're going to use Nunjux to render that string. So this is kind of like it's pretty much identical to like Jinja, render template string. In this case, it's just Nunjux render string. It's JavaScript, and we're passing it in the context, which is user message, and now we have that object template rendered, and then we're just going to add that to the chat window manually. So we're doing that. If you were doing it with just vanilla HTMX, you probably could just have the server return both, and then when you get it back, you kind of just pop them both up. But this is more optimistic rendering, where as soon as we press enter, we render it. We do it ourselves before even, if it takes a minute for the thing to do the LLM stuff, you don't want it to be a minute before the user sees like, oh, okay, my thing did actually send. So we're doing it that way. And then we're going to close out or empty out the input field. And then we're going to say, waiting for a new message. This, I have no idea if it actually works because I think it's actually supposed to be scroll top. I'm going to remove it because I don't think that was actually working. I'm going to get rid of this. And then we're going to focus on the input field. So now with all of this in place, this should technically work. So if I say bacon, same as our last example in that last video. This thing jumps because HTMX is gonna, it's gonna turn up the opacity on that, and then it's using the basic tailwind animation, whatever. So boom, now we have that. I don't like the way it's formatted, so this template, I probably would modify it. I was using it with a different model before, so it wasn't, it wasn't formatted like this. So we have some pseudo elements in the messages for hover actives. And you could also use the HTMX scripting in order to do something like HX on click, or, click and hold, or however you want to define it. Not click and hold, but you know what I mean. Like on specific actions, you can maybe fetch from your own API if you were going to make this part of a bigger thing. So maybe press and hold, HX on, just, reissue it. So if you want to get a different thing, or you could go ahead and not do anything at all like I'm doing here. And it's just kind of a cool way for you to know that like stuff is happening. Waiting for new message, I could say burger. And again, my internet is off. My battery's almost off too, but my internet is off, and we could say, and this thing's just giving us stuff. So, like HTMX for beginners who like marbles. HTMX for beginners who like marbles. So you can see, well, it's supposed to be scrolling. It's not scrolling. I think it's also missing a styling thing from the, yeah, I think it's also missing a styling thing for that. But the idea is, you can see it's still giving back all these things. This is local, 100% local. We could change the model. We can modify the model. So I think this is also the other reason why the Ollama situation is so interesting and so impressive to me, is the fact that you can do all this stuff fairly quickly. Like, look, this is 150 lines of code, and it's only because I'm being a little silly with the way that these classes are laid out, just so you guys can read them a little bit easier. Realistically, this is probably like 50 lines of code or something like that. And we have a very functional LLM chat window that you use for stuff. What I would give you for homework, if you were going to take this code and take it further, would be to figure out a way to add state for a quick memory. Now, you could do this through your own API backend if you want to skip doing it in a single file, or you can go ahead and use something like a simple local storage situation. Spoiler alert, or I guess a tip would be, remember that you have to send all of those messages to Ollama. So you're probably going to have to use a little bit of either JavaScript or the HTMX scripting, parameters, in order to basically hop into the request before it's sent out, in order to, concatenate all those messages and then add them or prepend them to the prompt before you send it out. So I'll let you see if you can figure that out, and I will leave this here. If this was helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. Leave comments down below. I always read them to see, what you liked, what you didn't like. Do you like pepperoni on your pizza? Is it all just cheese? I don't like, we'll figure it out together. So I'll see you guys in the next video.